Gentlemen, I got about 15 minutes at the most.
Yeah, we are back live, people. Like a little technical glitch. I don't know what happened there, people. We was in full flight of gentrification and education UK USA link up show with our brother Richard Benson in the house going in. Again, this is going to be fragmented now, but go and check out part one where my brother presented a whole range of slides on the breakdown of gentrification and the education part of it. Um, as I said, I don't know why it cut transmission there. Maybe we was just going too hard. But again, brother, where do you want to pick up from? I know you're time sensitive, and we was coming to a point where we was kind of be gonna start discussing some of it.
Yeah,
So maybe
you know what? I really just wanted to say that um, those who teach beyond, grade school, high school, college level, or whatever, you have to be able to see the work that you engage in as a call to work. So you're teaching, and this is for the persons who essentially want to see their efforts, their efforts targeted to some aspect of a systemic societal change. Your efforts have to be a call to work, and first and foremost, the type of education or the type of information sharing that you undertake must include some aspect of a political education. So your students, in addition to it filtering to the parents, they must be aware of the politics of place, their politics of place, and understand that they're the experts. Don't worry about a degree. Don't worry about the levels of schooling. They're the experts because who can better tell anyone about their community but them? They just have to now become brokers of power in those spaces to ensure that their needs are met by persons who claim to have their interest at heart as it relates to the general political process. Thus, the reasons why they voted for those representatives for those communities and neighborhoods in the first place. They now have to be accountable. So if you politically educate the community in order to establish a constituency, that process must come from those who are engaged within the general the general system, the general culture, the general process of edification or education. It must come from the teachers.
definitely, definitely. And one of the things that you were saying earlier on part one now was where you was speculating on when the plan was actually put in place because of the
Hmm.
of the change. And I think
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when you're talking about education, it's recognizing those subtle nuances of the extra charges, of the more crime, of the running down of the area and devaluing of property. It's understanding these points that are happening in your face in your local community and
Yep.
putting it all together long before it gets to the point of, as you're saying, the rapid change of the white to black to white and all the rest of it and the massive
Mm-hmm.
exodus.
Yep.
It's about recognizing those signs because I think when you break it down how you did, I think a lot of people, and I definitely know, if you was in London last, you'll see it when you come
Mm-hmm.
back that these same classic Brixton, Hackney, black areas
Uh-huh.
I have changed now. The housing levels, as we've just talked about, are high, sky high. They've changed the social climate as far as
Uh-huh.
closing down nightclubs and
Yep.
restricting licensing.
Yep.
Parking is a nightmare across London. And I
Yeah.
think the biggest difference with London as well is that to America is obviously in America, your populace is extremely larger. I always
Mm-hmm.
try to remind people New York State is bigger than the whole of the UK. So
Hmm.
put that in your
Hmm.
brain.
Gotcha.
But when you understand that, how again we a lot of people talk about a class system more so in the UK because there's smaller pockets of black people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're mixed in with the general white and Asian and other populace
Right.
kind of thing. But again, we are targeted in the same way where our areas, our classically black areas, have
Definitely.
now been supplanted with white couples, with other businesses. And as
Yeah.
you said, it's always a classic move to build something in the area to kind of, look what we've done kind of thing, to kind of move your attention away from the mass exodus.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
Definitely something to keep in mind, and as a simile from, you know, USA to UK, that's definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Terry.
No, just the thing that we was talking about, gentrification, from comparing from New York to London, and that it's happening rife. But I have a thing of, do you feel that it's an undoing of our own, or is it the system that forces us to able to do that?
I think having been subjected to generations of political and economic subordination, your victimization within these spaces, that victimization, it really can't be qualified largely as to your own, I would say, your own mechanistic actions. So much of it exists in such ways that I would say the preparatory social, structural, institutional forces and establishments ensured an undoing of certain ethnic racial enclaves of Black life. It ensured an undoing long before you see this particular building or this stadium or, you know, this project housing torn down. Like, those things had far been established long before we are dealing with it in the contemporary. Because someone can say, well, because you on the corner, you're not home and gentrification took place, whatever, because you're not fiscally and socially responsible. It's like, no, because to I would say to specify a point in time in the contemporary as being the critical factor or the significant factor as to why, you know, gentrification is taking place. It's not on an individual level. You know, we're talking about a constituency-based power and structural conglomerate of forces that exist to ensure that a block or a city structure is erected in addition to simultaneously an entire populace being eradicated. And folks will say, well, because we didn't buy, you know, this building at this particular time or whatever. Well, the truth of the matter is the building and structure may have been valuable. The distance from this particular building to you being able to get to your job, if you had a job, you know, hadn't changed, but the amenities wouldn't come to the space. Why? Because, as I was saying before, the people aren't deemed valuable, but the property is. And all of a sudden, you get what it is that you've been waiting for the past 20 years, but those things did not exist. Well, they existed, but they didn't begin to exist in your neighborhood until someone of white or European ancestry moved into the neighborhood. You've been there, and there's been the need for what it is that you're now buying from them. That's always been there. But you weren't deemed valuable enough to be a consumer of that particular product or engage in that as social amenity until you had a new transition of a white populace now begin to invade or now essentially usurp that particular space. So much of it, you know, is not about necessarily about what it is that you didn't do over the past 10 years. So much of it is attached to what it is that you were not allowed to do over the past 70 and 100 and 200 years. But just within the 20th century, we're talking about access to jobs and being able to, or given the opportunity to build institutional and generational wealth. Where on this planet has the mass, not a couple of individuals who've been able to, you know, benefit from a capitalist space, but where has the mass of Black and brown folk over time been able to do this uninterrupted with no violence, no social, physical, or political impediments that have been put in place, whether it's to not allow you to vote or not allow you to buy property or not allow you to just exist as a human being? Where has that existed just over the past 40 years? be it here or be it there in the UK, in such a way that you could live and make an earning that was free of any type of interruption or any type of social impediments that were not a threat on your life or your psyche. It doesn't exist.
I mean, it's key. Again, I'm just saying, uninterrupted space to think, to create is so important, to have a culture intact.
Indeed.
Again, your own people patronize themselves when it comes to business, community. As you're saying, people have to understand that it's a carefully laid plan, because again, this is an argument that you have a lot in the Black community, where a lot of people see it as a mental crutch almost when you talk about these things. Like, you are almost saying there is no hope. And again, there is hope, but again, some of the solutions are not palatable, as you're saying, when you do suggest them, because they invoke sometimes radical, sometimes revolutionary responses that don't make people comfortable all the time. But again, because it's a carefully laid plan over, as you're saying, 70, 100 years, your reaction has to be strong and decisive in order for you to break that routine, that plan, that carefully laid plan in place, or you have to really think carefully on how you're going to piece by piece deconstruct it. And I mean, I've heard you mention the word political now a few times, and me personally, I'm not one for voting. I understand in America, you know, there's a difference between the hierarchy vote to your local,
and then the local community vote. Yeah,
that's it. And I've had this discussion with a few Americans who have, you know, expressed more of a vote of confidence in that level of, you know, voting or political system at the least. But again, I you know, one of the things I always say is, I would love for people, especially in the UK with our voting system, if there was a part on the ballot that said, I don't want to vote for any of the above, I would campaign for that sooner than campaign to vote for the pre-existing, as we already know, attached candidates with their plan that's already in place, where even if at a local level, for me, and this is just my opinion, you succeed in getting certain people in place, you'll be met by the hierarchy in the Senate or wherever that is, House of Parliament, where their plan is very much fixed, as we said, long-standing, where they're going to block you. So, you know, that after giving my opinion now, my question to you is, where do you stand on that? And do you see it as a viable option to break or at least help in some way of this process of gentrification, how they use the education system?
I think constituency building is critical, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form, I'm not a proponent of the national vote, but I'm definitely in full support of local community voting. And one of the best examples that I can give, especially within the US, is that in the communities in Brooklyn, in New York City, so you have around Williamsburg, Crown Heights, East Flatbush, etc., but you have a critical mass of Orthodox Jews who've been able to establish their community there over the past, 2017? I would say since at least 1948. That community they don't care who the president of the United States is. By and large, they really, really don't. Because at the end of the day, no matter who's the president of that, no matter who's the president nationally, whoever sits on, within the federal office on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., they could really care less. But that president, for the most part, is going to it's going to be critical that they address the needs of such communities. They have a power base, because at the end of the day, they're going to vote their interests. They're not necessarily concerned with the party. And that the interests of a particular party, or the promises, or I would say the support of a party or an individual from whatever party is going to ensure that the needs of that constituency, this power base, that particular community is always met, then that essentially means that this constituency's, that essentially means that this constituency's needs are going to be met no matter who's in office as a local phenomenon. And you take that and you look at that nationally, whether we're talking about in Chinatown, whether we're talking about, and in wherever the Chinatown is, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, it really doesn't matter. Like, so within these spaces, there is a power base in a block. And in order to ensure that larger needs are met within the city, within a local space or whatever, are exacted or executed, those persons vote and they move and mobilize politically in such a way that their local needs will always usurp that of what it is that anybody could ever find on a federal level. Why? Because I would say almost as an incubator, they've been able to ensure that you have support mechanisms in place. The schools represent, I would say a particular curricular and also teaching reflection of what it is culturally that that community expresses. There's stores, whether it's grocery stores, whether it's fruit and vegetable markets, whether it's clothing, they reflect, express, and generate what it is that these persons are purporting culturally as Hasidic Jews. And you see that physically, in addition to ideologically and definitely religiously as well. So they will vote and move in such a way that those interests are met beyond whatever's taking place in a national sense in Washington, D.C. with whatever president that we have in office. So if Black life was able to move and construct and engineer its communities in such a way and vote to ensure that the person that they put in office is not only born out of and a product of and trained by those persons who've been able to establish that community, then you have a community, you have the needs, you have the expectation, the potentiality, and the projections for that space acting in perpetuity. If someone passes away tonight, as John Henry Clark would say, you bury the man, you move on with the plan. And that's how these persons actually, that's how they actualize, their existence. This is how their lives function. There's a general plan that moves beyond any individual. It's for the most part, it reflects the aims of the general community, which by voting to have said individual in this office that represents this community because they come out of it at the end of the day, their needs are being met. If they never go to the polls to vote for anyone or anything nationally or federally, it's fine. But for their local interests, they're intact.
Most definitely.
Gentlemen, I do apologize, but my time has been brought to a halt. I have another engagement that I have to attend to. I am there in a few days in the UK in a few days. I look forward to sitting down. So I guess we can do a part 2.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
We'll be sitting down with TV in the house. Mr. Riggs, we'll have a face-to-face chat and we'll go back in on some of these subject matters. So
I look forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. Look at in general, where can the people reach you before we clock off? And is there anything you want to quickly promote?
They can connect with me on rbenson12@gmail.com.
Okay.
rbenson12@gmail.com.
And if they want to read your books,
if they want to get my book, they can definitely go to Amazon. The name of the book is called Fighting for Our Place in the Sun, Malcolm X and the Radicalization of the Black Student Movement, 1960 to 1973. Brother Terry, Brother Richard, I will send you both links to the book, and you can disseminate it to your following as you see fit, or kick it out to whatever websites that you think would definitely be interested in the work. And I look forward to connecting with you two brothers in a few days so we can continue the conversation for something that I know is very, very important, as it relates to the sustainment of Black life.
Most definitely. Thank you again. I want to say big up to everybody that was watching. I don't know what happened with us during the broadcast. It just cut out. Clearly the information was too hardcore for them. Terry, you got any final words for the people before we sign off?
As I said again, once again, you know, it's been wonderful information. We went in deep, and you know, the information was too powerful for cables to hold on to it. So they tried to lock us off, but they'll never lock us off. You know what I always say? We need to buy black, spend black, be black. And if you are in London at this precise moment for the next 3 days, we've got an event called the Moorish Bazaar, which is Albert Grove, Acklam Village of Urbana, where you can buy all your merchandise, to a couple of music, some performers, some lecturers, and whatsoever. So you know what? Keep on buying black, keep on spending black, and go to every black bookstore that you can find, as well as black products, as well as black restaurants, as well as black agencies, business, you name it, just spend black.
All right, people. It's another Black Eyes TV production. Look out for part 1, powerful information. This part has all about the discussion and the back and forth. Peace, 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 people. We will see you soon.
Power moves.
All right.